Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to attend and participate in tonight's meeting. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. My name is Josh Travers. I'm the Assistant Field Manager for Red Rock Canyon. I'm excited to be holding these meetings as it serves as a significant milestone for Red Rock Canyon in our planning efforts. Next slide, please. Thank you all for giving us your attention and being here tonight, offering your active participation, expertise, and experience. Your input and participation are incredibly important to making this planning effort a success and for the BLM to deliver a well-developed recreation area management plan that supports your interests and care for such a spectacular place. I'm kicking us off with a few minutes for introductions. I'll co-present information we've collected, share where we are in the process. We will then provide time for you to ask questions, and we will respond in a virtual question and answer panel where I will answer many of your questions, but have other resource experts with me to assist. We'll spend the final hour of this meeting giving you time to share with us comments and information that you feel are pertinent to this planning process. Also, please remember and share with others, we are accepting comments and input to the email address we have made available to this planning effort, and it will be shared multiple times in this presentation. Next slide, please. I'm excited to be here tonight with a handful of individuals who have continuously supported the mission of Red Rock Canyon and our ability to ensure the work we do behind the scenes continues without being affected by the incredibly challenging and difficult year we all have faced. Although we are meeting virtually, I feel we have put together a structured and organized meeting that will be productive for all of you and the BLM. The individuals supporting this event our outdoor recreation planner, Kathy August, lands and realty specialist, Joni Guerrera, project manager, Shidra Rakestraw, public affairs officer, John Asselin, and the Red Rock and Sloan Canyon field manager, Katrina Williams. We also have Joe Kotecki with us. We have Environmental Management and Planning Solutions, Inc. joining us tonight, who BLM Red Rock Canyon has contracted to assist in this planning development project. As I read their names, I'll give them a second to turn on their camera and give a quick hello. We have Peter Gower, William Penner.
Good evening, everyone.
Teresa Ansel.
Hi, everybody.
And we have Madison Hart. We've previously worked with MC on previous meetings, and I've left Madison off from recognizing her participation. So I'm sharing today how much we appreciate Madison and all of the work that she does in the background and giving her extra appreciation tonight for her participation and all of the support that she gives these public meetings. I will also share the county is very interested in this planning effort and has been meeting with the BLM regularly about the management planning and their want to participate with the BLM to ensure we work together on developing a plan or a collection of plans that will consider the management of this very popular area. Next slide. The intent of this project is to take a step-down approach from our resource management plan and establish the vision, objectives, and goals that will provide site-specific direction for on-the-ground implementation of the resource management plan, including specific recreation permitting or use allocation decisions. This plan will address management, administration, information and education, and monitoring. It will also include the need for trail maintenance, improved facilities such as restrooms and parking lots as an example. This plan will also provide the direction for how the BLM will implement our fee collection program in the Calico Basin recreation area. This meeting kicks off a 30-day information gathering period. Your comments and input will be used to develop the plan from the very beginning. We will draft a preliminary plan using your input and put that preliminary plan out for a public comment and review period. BLM will incorporate that feedback into the final plan, where we will then begin plan implementation. Next slide. For those who are less familiar with Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area, the National Conservation Area, or NCA, is an approximately 198,000 acres managed by the Bureau of Land Management as part of the National Conservation Land System. Because of our popularity, many people think of Red Rock Canyon NCA as part of the National Park System, or perhaps a large urban park. It is important to remember we are not a national park, but a national conservation area with a mandate in our legislation to conserve, protect, and enhance for the benefit and enjoyment of present and future generations. Also in our legislation, Congress included general management direction and required the development of a resource management plan that today provides BLM and Red Rock Management high-level direction for managing the different areas that make up the National Conservation Area. Congress called for providing recreation opportunities that allows the public to enjoy and appreciate the unique natural settings, but provided primary direction to management to conserve and protect the natural and cultural resources that make up the NCA, and made that our highest priority. Along with our close proximation to Las Vegas and our growing population, we consistently hold strong every year in the top 5 best things to do in Las Vegas on Yelp. We are also promoted by the Las Vegas Strip and other popular tourism areas as a must-go-see destination. Red Rock Canyon has become a national outdoor attraction, and in some cases, an international destination arena for many activities, including hiking, scenic viewing, equestrian use, mountain biking, canyoneering, climbing, and bouldering, with many other opportunities quickly gaining traction. Prior to 2016, Red Rock Canyon was visited by less than 2 million visitors per year. By 2018, we broke 2 million, then visited by 3.5 million visitors in 2019, and 3.2 million visitors in 2020. If Red Rock Canyon had not closed the scenic drive due to concerns with the pandemic, our trending shows we would have been visited by 3.8 million visitors this last year. With growing populations and expected growth and interest in recreation activities at Red Rock Canyon to continue, Red Rock Canyon is developing this recreation area management plan for all and others for all areas with subsequent implementation issues that require specific focus. Next slide, please. The map you see here shows the Calico Basin recreation area. It's the planning area for this planning effort, and includes significant areas of interest such as Red Springs picnic area and boardwalk, Craft Mountain, the southeastern side of the Calico Hills, a portion of the La Madre Wilderness, and Brownstone Canyon. Next slide, please. The planning area consists of approximately 5,700 acres. There are nearly 50 miles of trail in an area where 6 miles of them are designated by the BLM. Trails provide hiking and equestrian opportunities and access to climbing routes. Calico Basin Road not only provides access to popular recreation areas, but also to private residential homes. The popular recreation area surrounds the residential community in Calico Basin. Las Vegas is expected to grow by 860,000 people by 2026. Red Rock Canyon is expecting to see well over 4 million visitors by 2024. Today's trending shows Calico Basin alone will see over 1 million visitors by 2023. I will close my portion of the presentation to remind you the intent of this project is to establish the vision, objectives, and goals that will provide site-specific direction for on-the-ground implementation of the resource management plan, which may include specific recreation permitting or use allocation decisions, and will address management, administration, information and education, and monitoring efforts, as well as fee collection. I'll now pass the presentation over to Peter Gower with Environmental Management and Planning Solutions, Inc. to finish the remainder of tonight's presentation.
Thank you, Josh. My name is Peter Gower with Environmental Management and Planning Solutions, or EMPSI. We're pleased to be working with the BLM on this important project. And as Josh mentioned, we're working together on developing the plan. And one of the first efforts that we undertook as part of the plan was to do field work and inventory the existing trails. If you could go to the next slide, Teresa. Inventory the trails and climbing areas, recreation infrastructure, and other features within the Calico Basin. So that is the map that you're seeing here on the screen. So this is really our baseline for starting the planning effort. The next slide, please. So as Josh mentioned, we are in the information gathering period, and we are pleased that you're joining us here tonight because the information that we receive during this time frame will be important to developing the environmental assessment and the recreation area management plan. Again, to reiterate, the purpose of the plan is to provide that long-term vision for managing recreation in the Calico Basin, really with a focus on those popular day use activities such as climbing, hiking, and equestrian use that occur within the Calico Basin. As Josh mentioned, the ramp is critical at this point because of the increasing recreation demand, visitor use in the area. It's increasing at a rate, 340% we estimate over the last couple decades, and over three quarters of a million people. So addressing that through proper management will help avoid user conflicts and resource impacts as well, while meeting those public recreation demand. Next slide. So as part of the preliminary planning efforts, the BLM and the EMPSI have been working to develop some preliminary issues. And these issues that I'll share with you here in the presentation tonight will be refined based on your input that you provide during this information period and refined throughout the planning process. So these are preliminary considerations and issues for analysis as part of the NEPA process and in the recreation area management plan. So in terms of recreation use, some of the considerations for the plan include management of climbing and potential access to designated climbing areas, mountain biking within the Calico Basin, whether and where additional recreation infrastructure may be needed within the basin, and overall recreation impacts on resources. Next slide, please. Other consideration relates to fees and administration, and something that may be considered as part of the plan will be a fee collection for visitor use in the area with a defined fee area, which could include the installation of a fee booth. The BLM is working with Clark County to better understand the legal status of the existing rights-of-way within the basin and how those could be modified or improved to provide different or better access to the basin. And tribal consultation is very important, access to tribal resources and compliance with the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. Next slide. As Josh mentioned, and as I'm sure you all know, a key consideration for this area and one that's fairly unique is the visitor use and potential impacts on the area residents from that use. And these concerns include trespassing on private property, traffic, and the ability of residents and recreation users to share the same access ways and parking within the Calico Basin. Next slide. So as part of the NEPA process, the environmental assessment and key considerations for the Recreation Area Management Plan are recreation impacts on biological resources, including sensitive species, and the potential for soil compaction and erosion, such as from social trails or user-created trails, which can have resource impacts, for example, the propagation of noxious weeds. Next slide. That soil compaction can lead to sedimentation, which is a concern for the area hydrology and relates to potential impacts on sensitive riparian areas and riparian vegetation that does occur within the basin. And similarly, recreation impacts on cultural resources. So those will be considerations for the EA and the ramp. Next slide. So the wilderness areas, as Josh mentioned, the Calico Basin overlaps with the La Madre Mountain Wilderness. And this area provides unique recreation opportunities, and it also goes and also requires unique management considerations for being consistent with the wilderness area management needs. So some considerations could include fixed protection in the wilderness areas, such as bolts for rock climbing. So to summarize the potential considerations for the ramps, these include an extended fee area to cover the Red Springs and Craft Mountain areas on BLM administered public lands, deciding where and when certain recreational uses may or may not be appropriate within the basin, determining the need for new infrastructure and amenities such as parking, restrooms, potentially new trails, and additional signage, managing recreation in a way that avoids impacts on those biological, cultural, hydrologic, and other resources within the basin is an important consideration. And accommodating the increasing demand for recreation and visitor needs, balancing that with the legislation that governs the National Conservation Area, the La Madre Mountain Wilderness, and then the laws and regulations that apply to the private lands that Clark County administers within the basin. Next slide. So at this point, I am going to turn the meeting over to my colleague, William Penner, who is going to take over facilitating us through the question and answer session, and then subsequently the comment session. So William, take it away.
Thanks, Peter. Good evening, everyone. For the next 40 minutes, actually almost perfectly 40 minutes until 6 p.m., we're going to go ahead and go through a question and answer session where everyone can go ahead and find out more information from the BLM. The ways that you can go ahead and participate is by clicking the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. You can see it there. If you type your question, it'll bring up a dialog box. You can also go ahead and ask your questions anonymously. And then there's 3 different ways the BLM will go ahead and answer it. They'll either answer it within the Zoom application, they'll read your question out and then answer it live. Or alternatively, if they require more information or in some way need to follow up later, they will go ahead and actually provide that answer at a subsequent time. So there's more information as well, just so everyone knows, at the Calico Basin Ramp EA website. You'll hear me mention that multiple times during this meeting at virtualpublicmeeting.com/Calico Basin Ramp-home. And also, for those individuals who are participating by phone and would like to be able to actually ask a verbal question, you can go ahead and press *9. So Josh, with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you and your ID team to have some dialogue with the folks who are here today.
Thanks, William. I appreciate that. And I have Kathy August with me, who's going to be reading questions off tonight. And I will go ahead and start answering some of those questions, or I'll default to some of the specialists I have here with me in the room. Go ahead, Kathy.
Question from Anonymous. Yeah, is about Brownstone Canyon. To ensure access in the future, as access right now is extremely difficult, how do you approach residential development and siting?
Yeah, that's a great question. Brownstone Canyon is part of this planning area, and we know that access is not easy. In part of this planning effort, and during the planning effort, we are having continued conversations with the developers and landowners in that area, and looking at access and how do we ensure that we're going to keep access into that area, and also keep us in a position where we can protect that area for the natural and cultural resources that are in that area. And so that is something that will go into this plan, and we'll consider as we look at how we're going to manage recreation for all areas, including that very important area.
We have thank you very much, Josh, for Anonymous too. John asked, did not mention the term scrambling. Is it included under the heading of hiking? It's quite a different activity.
Yeah, scrambling we look at as between a mix of, between bouldering, climbing, and canyoneering. Scrambling is considered in all of that planning, and is an activity that we recognize is happening in this part of the area that we're planning for, or the Calico Hills especially, but other areas within the planning area, and is something that we're considering in our planning, and will be part of the management plan. Good question.
Anonymous also asked, is the use of mountain bikes in Calico allowed at this time? Are they going to be allowed? Will they have access to the wilderness as well?
Yeah. Mountain bikes are considered as a mechanized piece of equipment, and are not currently allowed in wilderness. With that said, mountain bikes are not an allowed use today within the Calico Basin recreation area and any of the designated trails there. However, it is something that we are including in the analysis for the recreation area management plan. And I want to ask that if mountain biking is of interest, or it's an area that you use, and mountain biking has caused conflicts, these are the type of comments and input that we want included in this commenting period. This is why we're asking, before we go to developing a recreation area management plan, is so that we can take your input and comments collectively and build a recreation area management plan that supports the community's interest.
Thank you very much. John Allen also asked, Are there plans in motion to expand or establish new parking areas to better accommodate the increased use as well as horse trailers?
So facilities is something that we are considering in this recreation area management plan. But I want to remind everyone asking questions that we do not have a plan yet for what future management is going to look like. That's what this project is doing, is it's developing that plan, and we're in the very early stages of it. And probably the most important part of the planning process, where we need your input to help us understand what the needs are. So if parking lots is a need, we need to hear that. If additional parking is a concern, we also want to hear that. And then if there's a specific vehicle type like trailer access and the like, we want to hear those comments as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a question. What is the time frame to complete the study? When will the work begin on implementation?
The plan is to have the recreation area management plan developed by the end of this fiscal year, and right after final plan, we're going to go right into implementation. Now, again, because we do not have a plan in place and we're developing this plan, it's hard to say what implementation looks like, and it's very possible that it could be phased projects where we consider, larger, more expensive projects to come a little bit later that may require additional analysis or a look at how can we implement the things that we need to build to support recreation, or the things that we need to do to protect resources. What do we need to do that? And depending on how much work is involved, how much funding is involved, those are all factors that we look at and how they apply in how we prioritize projects.
Thank you very much for that question. Jane Reeling asks, would you consider limiting or prohibiting dogs running loose?
Great question. That's already in practice, and it's something that we require all through the national conservation area, and it's hard to get 100% public support for the management of pets, particularly dogs, and keeping them on leashes. But at all of our recreation sites, we require dogs on leashes, and that's not going to change. That's going to continue on all trails and all recreation sites, and we will continue to work with the public on getting support from them to keep their animals on a leash.
Okay, another person, thank you very much. Next question. Is the parking along both sides of the main access road county or under BLM control?
Calico Basin Road is a county road, and it is not managed by the Bureau of Land Management.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you speak to the Red Rock Canyon Legacy Trails project is going to affect or support access to Calico Basin?
The Legacy Trail is a high-profile project that is going to parallel Highway 159. The first segment being planned will leave the south side of the highway from Summerlin all the way to the entryway of the Scenic Drive, and it will cross Calico Basin Road.
Thank you very much for that question. John K. asked, if a fee is implemented, how would the revenue be spent? Would it go back into the recreation area?
Yes, the money raised, the revenue generated within Calico Basin will get put back into managing Calico Basin and the infrastructure that's going to support it.
Uh, Okay, someone has asked, is Howard Hughes stated the future plans call for trail access to BLM land from Little Red Rocks. Is this part of the study?
Say the question one more time.
Okay, Summerlin, Howard Hughes Corporation has stated that they call for trail access to BLM land from Little Red Rocks. Is this part of this study?
So Summerlin has plans to develop, I don't have the complete master plan, but there's plans to build up towards Little Red Rock. And there's going to be some trails that are built in that community, in the planning for that development. And they will provide access to Red Rock. We're working very closely with Summerlin and are in conversations on how the BLM and Red Rock Canyon can support their development and their implementation of a trail network that's going to go up in that area, but also possibly provide access into Red Rock Canyon.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Josh, real quick, I want to interject and just let everyone know that this is being recorded and will be posted to the BLM's YouTube channel. So if someone's typing away and you missed a question and you thought, wow, that sounded like a great answer from Josh, you'll be able to actually go back and review that.
Thank you, William. Yeah.
Okay, Jim also asked, I am concerned with managing recreation and repairing areas like the Ash Springs Meadow. Will be more focused efforts in sensitive areas like this?
Yeah, the purpose of the recreation area management plan, again, it's a step down from our resource management plan where our legislation has mandated that we are protecting cultural and natural resources as our highest priority, and then ensuring that there's access for recreational opportunities. And so we're considering protection and how we manage recreation within this plan.
Thank you very much, John. Richard asks, will there be restricted areas prohibiting climbers access to climbing routes?
We're looking at where all climbing routes are at. We're looking at the trail network that leads, that provides access to those climbing routes. And within this plan, we want to ensure that we are providing access to all of the areas where recreation management is needed. What we want to get away from is having a network of unmanaged trails where continued resource impacts occur, and ensure that we have trails that provide access to all of the needed areas. So again, what would be very helpful to us if there's areas that you know that require access to, is to ensure in your comments that you're helping us identify where that access is needed so that we can consider all of those locations.
Thank you very much. Another question from another John. Will the National Park Senior Pass cover the Calico Basin access fee?
We're early in the development of the recreation area management plan and how we're going to collect fees. It's really early to say exactly what fee collection is going to look like until we go through this planning process and we determine how fee collection is going to occur. So it is possible that the Red Rock annual pass, as an example, could also be the same pass that would provide access to Calico Basin. That's definitely something that we're considering. But again, we want your feedback on what you would like to see and how we would implement fee collection within this plan. And if you have ideas, concerns, or wants, we want to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Sean. Kevin asked, please define the word trails. Trails can be walked, jogged, run on, ridden on by bicycle, driven down by 2 or 4 engine powered vehicle.
I don't have the BLM's exact definition of a trail, but in the most basic form, it's the path that the BLM has gone through the planning process and designated as a trail, and identified it as an area that we know that will have soil compaction, that will have the disturbance, and will maintain that to ensure that access is being provided somewhere. What's not being designated, or what's not in the definition of a trail, is something that we have not inventoried and are not calling a designated trail within our inventory, and it's something that's not getting maintained, and therefore there's resource impacts or other environmental concerns going on in areas that we don't have within our inventory.
Thank you very much for that question. Still looking at all the questions that we have. Some people are just making comments, which we do appreciate.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a number of comments in there, and I do want to remind people that we are going to provide a commenting period, and we also have an email address designated for you to make comments if you're not able to make a comment in this at this particular meeting.
Yeah, that's a great thing. We're about halfway through the question and answer period, and that's exactly right, Josh. We're going to have an hour set aside for verbal comments, and then folks can go ahead and mail or email in comments later. We'll have a slide at the very end, and then also the website you see at the bottom of the screen provides you with the methods to comment. So great thing to remind everyone of about halfway through the question and answer.
Okay, next question from Roxanne. If you're working with Summerlin to create a trail, how will you control traffic coming from that trail onto the managed area? Can people ride from that trail and access Calico without a pass?
There were two questions, and I just want to make sure that I try to address them both. Can we repeat that, Kathy?
Okay.
For me?
If you're working with Summerlin from a trail from Summerlin to control traffic, how are you going to control the traffic coming from the trail into Calico Basin?
Yeah, we're very early in the planning process, and also very early in our conversations with Summerlin on what they're developing, and before I can give a accurate answer, we need to get a little bit further into the planning process, and I'm sorry that I don't have a good answer for that, but the trails and the opportunities that Summerlin is working on isn't to control traffic, and our collaboration with Summerlin isn't to control traffic. From a BLM standpoint, if Summerlin is planning recreation activities and access within their developed areas that's outside the NCA, but they're going near or up to the NCA, it's Red Rock's best interest to ensure that we are getting ahead of that, and instead of allowing unmanaged recreation that's going to come off of the Summerlin area, we want to work with Summerlin to ensure that we plan for recreation that we can support and recreation that we can manage, and allow that access on trails that we know that we have in our inventory and are maintaining and preventing resource damage. And so it's more about planning and being prepared for recreation activities.
Thank you very much, Roxanne. Our next question from an anonymous. Will the social trails be rehabbed and new trails installed?
We are looking at the current travel network, and we hope to hear from the public on the need for to look at the trails that we've inventoried, and William can share about how and where you can go to look closely at that network. It's actually on the website that's listed at the bottom of the page that you're looking at right now. But you can look at everything that's been inventoried and comment and give us input on the trails that are are really important to you and that you would like us to consider in the travel network.
Thank you very much. Jim asks, the boardwalk is very successful at Red Springs. The meadow, which has been used for football or soccer 20 years ago, has been rejuvenated to a natural state. Would there be some consideration for boardwalks in Ash Springs Meadow?
That's a great question, and I would recommend. I mean, if that's something that you would like to see, my ask is that you include that in your comment when you go to making comments. At this time, we're looking to hear what your interests are and what you would like to see, so that when we go to developing a recreation area management plan for managing this area, that we're including and looking at and considering everything, all of the opportunities and the needs that we need to do to manage that area well. So yeah, but please provide that as a comment if that's something you'd like to see. Thank you.
Question from an anonymous: are petroglyphs and Little Red Rocks considered part of this area?
Little Red Rock is not part of Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area.
Thank you very much. We'll have a lot of good questions coming in. Another question.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to remind everyone we're about exactly at the halfway point through the 40. We got about 20 minutes before we go ahead and move to the comments.
Thanks, William. And these are all great questions. And thank you for providing questions and participating in this. It helps everyone. And the goal of the question and answers is to help everyone formulate their comments and considerations for the input that they want to provide. And so I appreciate everyone participating. Kathy, go ahead.
I have another anonymous. Where would someone find information about Clark County plans for parking in Calico Basin?
That's a great question. Clark County is working with the BLM on this planning effort. They're in the same stage we are, because we're working on this collaboratively, and as we do that, so they're anxious to hear what everyone has to say and the input that we get from this, to see to work with us as we start to move into development of a recreation area management plan. And again, and that, you know, as we work with the county, we have not together defined how we're going to plan for Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area and our management of recreation within our borders, and how we're going to manage or how the county will manage recreation within the county's border. And that's what we're working on together and going through this process together. And we'll, as we move through the process, we'll then determine what the final product is going to look like, whether it's one collaborative plan or a series of plans, one provided by the BLM and another provided by the county.
Thank you very much. Scott asks, would hours of access to the basin be limited?
That will come out in the recreation area management plan. However, with that said, we do have day use areas there. Red Spring is currently a day use area, and I don't see a day use changing. I mean, Red Rock Canyon, from the scenic drive to Red Spring, it's all day use. And that's, I mean, that's again, that's it, we need to hear from the public to see what they want, and we can consider how we're going to manage the uses.
Thank you very much. Another question, will off-trail use still be allowed? Much of the area has no established routes, especially on the rocks.
That's a great question. We always encourage people to use designated trails because what's really important is that we're a national conservation area, and we have trails that provide access to places, and if everyone used those designated trails, it would lessen the impact that's happening to the resources within our border. With that said, we also recognize that we don't have enough designated trail to support the 4 million visitors that we know that we're going to get in the next couple of years, and we need to ensure that we have a travel network that supports that. And so if there's existing social trails and networks out there that's not included in our designated trails, please provide us comment on the trails that you would like to see added into our transportation network.
Thank you very much. Teresa asked, the petroglyphs are being damaged. Can you fence off areas?
Fencing can be something that we consider. There's portions of the eastern border that we have barbed wire fencing on. It would be, again, if you're interested in seeing where or if you'd like to suggest that there's areas that need fencing, if you could provide that in a comment, it's definitely something we can consider.
Thank you very much. Another question. Can you please clarify the rules on bikes, particularly in the wilderness, and what area you consider or are able to consider in this plan?
I want to ensure I answer. Can we read
Yeah,
that question?
can you clarify the rules on bikes in the wilderness? And what are you able to consider in this plan?
Well, at this time in wilderness, bikes are considered mechanized and not allowed in wilderness. It's very clear that they're considered mechanical and are just not allowed. It is something that we can consider in this planning effort for Calico Basin. I also want to put a plug in for Cottonwood Valley, which we're also accepting comments on, which is a very popular mountain biking area, and an area that we're also looking at for not only the travel network that's been designated in the Cottonwood area, but there's a lot of room for consideration for growth in our trail network there. And I would recommend that you go to our website and look at that planning effort and provide comment, which closes on the 22nd of this month. And so if you're interested in mountain biking, that's a great area to look for increased mountain biking opportunities. The important thing to remember about Calico Basin is we're managing right now approximately 750,000 people. We're expecting 1 million people to be in the Calico Basin area in the next 2 years, and we really have to look carefully at how we manage the different recreational uses, and there's not a lot of room for a lot of mountain bike use. And so if it is considered in this area, I also want folks to pay attention to Cottonwood so that there could be input put into where there's a whole lot of opportunity between the two planning areas.
Thank you
Josh,
very
I wanted
much.
to jump in and just remind folks, we have just about 10 minutes left in the question and answers. Then we'll go into the verbal comments. And also wanted to clarify one date that you stated. You had mentioned it would be March 22nd when the comments close. It's actually March 25th when the comments close. And we'll go ahead and we'll look at that when we come to the very end and we have that slide. But as you mentioned, all of that information is also at the website, which is shown in the slide below. So about 10 minutes left for everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another question. How will social equity be considered?
Social equity is considered in our planning for this area. And we want to ensure access, and we want to also ensure the care for Calico Basin. When we're looking at 1 million people coming to an area where we have very little facilities to accommodate all of the use, we want to ensure that we're setting the area up so that we can continue to accommodate that use, and provide the right kind of facilities and access. And so we're looking at what can we provide in there to ensure that everyone has the ability to get in and to use the area.
Thank you very much for that question. The person wanting clarification on where the wilderness area is in Calico Basin.
If you go to the website that's listed at the bottom of the page that you're looking at now, you can see where the boundary of the wilderness falls within the planning area. There's also tools on that website that allows you to use Google Earth and some other resources so that you can on your own computer, you can have the data that we use and show you where those boundary lines are. Kathy's just sorting through some questions and just she's pulling out questions that we haven't answered yet.
Yeah. Some of these are.
I'd also go ahead and remind, I don't see any phone participants right now, but if for some reason I just happen to miss them, people can press *9 and ask a question if you're on the phone as well. Just reminding, it looks like everybody's participating by Zoom tonight.
One question from Richard is there be more meetings for gathering information about designated climbing and scrambling?
We don't have any designations of climbing areas, and there's no designations for scrambling. Those recreation activities happen off of designated trails, and we recognize that as a recreation opportunity and an activity that occurs in Red Rock. But there's no designation of those particular activities, and we're not going to designate scrambling areas within this recreation area management plan. We do recognize it's an important activity, but it's not something that we're going to designate as areas that we're going to allow or not allow for scrambling. There was a second part to that question. Can you tell me that question one more time, Kathy? The other part to that question was about designated climbing areas, and we're in our recreation area management plan for Calico Basin. We're going to recognize that climbing happens. We want to look closely at the access to those climbing areas to ensure that we're considering them in our travel network. But as far as climbing activity specifically, we're going to address climbing in a different planning area effort where we are going to, a project that we're going to be taking on in the near future is a climbing management plan. And that's where we will look specifically at climbing in Red Rock Canyon. And it will have its own management plan that provides vision and direction for how we're going to manage climbing at Red Rock Canyon holistically across the entire national conservation area.
Josh, we got about 5 minutes left.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jim asked, why was a section of the Madre Wilderness area included in the Calico Basin ramp?
Yeah, that's a great question. I included that part of the wilderness because we wanted to capture brownstone. It's really important that we set direction and in a plan to protect brownstone, but also to ensure that there's access in there. and for us to be able to include brownstone in there, we did need to capture a small portion of the La Madre wilderness. With that said, we do not plan to change the wilderness management plan that is already established for La Madre wilderness, other than to complement it with how we're going to manage the access into brownstone and to continue the protection of that area.
Thank you very much. One of our last questions. This being the beginning of the process, could you explain the additional steps when public input will be accepted and concerns aired?
Yeah, so we're collecting all of the comments and input here, and we're going to use that to develop a recreation area management plan and an environmental assessment that supports that plan, and we're going to develop a draft, and that draft will go out to the public where you'll get an opportunity to review it and understand what the direction that we want to go. And at that point, you'll be able to provide input and comments about the draft, and then we will take that information and again ensure that the recreation area management plan is a plan that we best supports the information that we collect, where we will then produce a final recreation area management plan and EA or environmental assessment. And Kathy, we'll do one more question.
Having a lot of people saying thank you, and we thank you.
Yeah, no, this is the most important part of the process, and I really appreciate everyone taking the time to join us at these meetings. Your input and your comments is incredibly important to the development of this plan, and I appreciate you all telling us thank you, but we appreciate your participation and your expertise.
We also have a question. Can you email all of us when the draft plan is ready for input?
What we will do is we will get this out to the public the same way that we did for this meeting. We will send a press release out. We will put it out on our social media channels. Please follow BLM Nevada on Facebook and other social media channels. By doing that, you will be well informed on when we're putting out these kind of public meetings, and you'll be able to participate in all of our efforts, and not just for these, but we also share when we're doing other work on those channels. And so it's really important to follow us, and you get to learn about what we're doing. So great question, and I think that's a good segue into us getting ready to launch right into our commenting period.
Excellent. Thanks, Josh. I'm going to augment your answer there, and also note that if you visit the website, virtualpublicmeeting.com/Calico Basin ramp-home, there is actually a form you can fill out, and you can select whether you want to be added to the mailing list. So we will actually be able to inform people when major events are coming up in the project. So with that, Josh is correct. We're basically at 7. 7 my time, 6 your time. Sorry, I'm in New Mexico right now. Can we go to the next slide, Teresa? Excellent. So the next hour is going to be dedicated to the public providing their verbal comments. The way we're going to do this is that we're going to go through the commenters in the order of their registration. I'm going to go ahead and call your name. I'd ask that everyone then use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen, and I will open your microphone. If you're on the phone, you can raise your hand with *9. I again don't see we have any phone participants, but if people do join, I'll remind them of that throughout. There'll be a timer that will be displayed on the screen, and it will show the time remaining for your comment. So once you're actually unmuted, we'll then start the timer. And your comments will be included in the project record. So Teresa, we can go to the next slide. Excellent. A lot of information on this slide. So critically, we want to hear from all the members of the public. And what we really want to do is show respect for everyone who's chosen to participate tonight and provide input. And to do that, BLM wants us to use the following guidelines. Please stay within your time. That way everyone can go ahead and participate, and you can go ahead and allow everyone else to speak. Allow for a diversity of voices with this. Please be respectful of others and refrain from profanity. If you're not following those guidelines, we reserve the right to go ahead and mute your microphone, and we will move on to the next person. If you didn't get to speak, as an example, you didn't get to register ahead of time, and maybe we don't get to you on the back end, or you want to provide just more comments, you can visit the RAMP website for more information. I said it before and I'll say it again, virtualpublicmeeting.com/Calico Basin ramp-home. So with that, what we're going to do is we're going to have the first 10 commenters who registered. I'm going to go through them. I'm going to call out their names, ask them to raise their hand. And some of them I can see as an example aren't here, but some of them are. But we're going to go through. Kevin Bailey, are you here? And raise your hand. Kevin, I looked and didn't find you. Aaron McDermott, would you raise your hand? I did see you here. Excellent. Aaron, I'm going to go ahead, going to click allow you to talk. And you
Perfect. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you. I'm Erin McDermott, the Executive Director for Friends of Red Rock Canyon. Friends just turned 36 years old, and we're the oldest Friends group to partner with the BLM in the country. As a 501c3, our mission is one of preservation, protection, and enrichment. Over the years, our organization has donated over $2.4 million in direct financial aid to Red Rock. On average, our volunteers work 22,000 hours annually, or the equivalent of 13 full-time employees, to keep Red Rock pristine. Friends is grateful that the Calico Basin planning area includes Brownstone Canyon. That canyon is home to remarkable cultural resource sites that need protection and continued management. Lastly, we promoted this public comment opportunity to our membership base and on social media. We want to give huge thanks to the BLM and MC for giving all of us the opportunity to comment on and shape the future of Calico Basin. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to lower your hand and mute you. And now I'm going to go ahead. Brittany Robertson is the next individual. Brittany, if you are here, go ahead and raise your hand. I do see that you're not here. If I actually call someone's name and you come in a little bit later, I can loop back to you and prioritize your participation. But I do see that Todd Scottrell is here. Todd, do you mind raising your hand if you want to provide a comment? Excellent. Todd, I'm asking you to unmute. You can go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say that as a scrambler out at Calico Basin, which is probably a world-class location for scrambling, I want to make sure that folks like myself are taken into consideration in that, you know, we're not typically hiking trails. We're looking for obstacles within the area. And I just, like I say, I just want to make sure that we're taking into consideration whatever plan is developed. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. I appreciate that. I'm going to lower your hand and then mute you. And the next individual is Cinna Hunter. Cinna, you want to raise your hand? Excellent. Thank you. Cinna, I asked you to unmute there. Go ahead. You're unmuted, Cinna. Go ahead. Cinna, I see that you are unmuted. If you joined also using your phone for audio, you may need to unmute that as well. Hey, Sina, what I'm going to do, it appears we're having technical difficulties, is I'm going to have an individual from EMPSI reach out to you, and we'll go ahead and address that, and I'm going to loop back to you and bring you back up just as soon as we resolve that issue. So for the moment, I'm going to go ahead and disable talking and lower your hand, and then I'm going to move on to Jane Railing. Jane, are you here? You go ahead and raise your hand at the bottom of your screen. There you go. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, Jane, go ahead. I just, oops, asked you to unmute. It's not working right now either for some reason. Jane, I'm going to do a little bit of a workaround here. I'm going to promote you to a panelist, and we're going to try it that way. Jane, are you able to unmute yourself now? Looks like you're still muted. You should be able to unmute yourself. It's at bottom left. Whoop, you just did it.
Okay.
Hey, welcome. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Jane Riling. I have been listening to the meeting, and I noticed that among the other concerns, what we did not mention yet is the native animals. I would like to make sure that the plan includes some protection for the animals that are native there. There are so many pet dogs that are running about on and off leashes that I think it disrupts the habitat and the peace of mind for the native creatures in the basin. So please consider them as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that perspective. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and change you back to an attendee, and you are muted. So next individual is Teresa Terem. Teresa, I see that you're here. You want to raise your hand? It's the bottom of your screen. Excellent. Thank you. Teresa, go ahead.
You know, I have no immediate questions at this time. I will just continue to closely monitor the discussion, which I am very interested in.
Well, great. Thanks for coming out tonight. Okay, next individual is going to be Thomas Kotab. Thomas, are you here? Excellent. Thomas, I just asked you to unmute. Go ahead.
Hello.
Welcome.
I would like generally for the BLM to, before restricting any access or before regulating anything, to consider more options for recreation. When we talk about recreation, it seems it's just fun or something like that, but I would like to have it considered as something essential that promotes fitness in the overall population. If instead of blocking the access to the conservation area during the early virus response, we had actually opened it up, who knows how many lives could have been saved instead of ruined. As for the actual resource or recreation area management plan, I would like to see, I would say, more access resolved so that the user conflicts are prevented. I view the huge increase in the visitation of Calico partly as or hugely as a result of limiting access to the scenic loop by way of the reservation system. And before anything is restricted, I would like to see it rather expanded because it is, I would say, the population here is growing and it needs more options.
Thanks, Thomas. I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand and disable talking. Next individual is John Allen. And I did see, John, you want to go ahead and raise your hand? There we go. Perfect. I'm going to ask you to unmute. John, you should be able to unmute. Hey, good evening.
Are we good? Is that good?
Yeah, we hear you just perfectly.
Okay, how do you do? I'm John Allen. I'm representing Backcountry Horsemen of Nevada. We're part of a national group, Backcountry Horsemen of America. We're dedicated to keep the public lands open to equestrian use and to maintain trails for the use of everyone. In the country, we have last year in excess of $2 million of trail work was provided by Backcountry Horsemen of America. And here in Nevada, we managed close to $400,000 for trails improvements and maintenance, and the varying things that we do in our 3 chapters. I serve as the president for the state of Nevada and the president for the Bristlecone chapter, which is servicing Southern Nevada. One of our highlights in our organization here in Clark County is to assist Friends of Red Rock when they do trail restoration projects. We get a really good turnout for people with their horses and pack animals to haul gravel in for trails and the various things we do. We do it all over the county, but Red Rock is one of the favorite equestrian use places. 2 things that I think would be essential in our planning is to look at the parking situation. If we have an increased population and increased use of the area, increased parking is going to be essential, and increased parking to accommodate horse trailers, because it is a great equestrian destination for trail rides, especially on the southern end of the property. Many horse riders like to get away from the hikers and they use the southern end. So I hope we can do really well in what we're planning here and things go well. A couple other things I'll include, well, the biggest thing would be information and education on how to interact with horses on the trail.
That's excellent. And if you have more you want to follow up with, you can always go ahead and provide more comments. The information on how to do that will be provided at the end of the meeting, and it's also available at the website you see below. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, great. Okay, so the next individual is Kevin Heckler. I searched and did not see Kevin here, so I'm going to go ahead and ask Teresa to switch out the slides. So while she's doing that, whoa, wow, that was fast. Excellent. Well, I was going to go ahead and mention to everyone and remind them that we are going to go ahead and talk about the ways to comment at the end of this time, and just about another 45 minutes, and that you can also go ahead and find more information on comments or ways to provide them, and just more information about the ramp at the website at the address shown below. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Cody Bradford to raise their hand. That button is at the bottom of your screen. Cody, I didn't see you signed in, so I'm going to go ahead and go to David Granstrom next, who I did see signed in. Excellent. I see you, David. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute, and then you can provide your comment. Go ahead.
Hi, I've heard several people talking about scrambling, and I'm wondering if yourself and the other people who are going to be making the plan are really aware of what scrambling includes. There are several people at this meeting that are much more experienced than I, and I'm sure that we could somehow get a group of you to come out and expose you to some scrambling, and it's much easier to show than to explain. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to the BLM. So I wanted to go ahead. I see we now actually have a phone caller, and I wanted to let that individual know that if I call their name and they actually are that individual, they can raise their hand and I will let them talk. They do it by pressing *9. So with that, I'm going to go on to Desiree Locatelli. Desiree, are you here? Desiree, you can raise your hand at the bottom of the screen. If we don't get you now and you come in later, I can come back to you. Jen Hanks. Jen, are you here? Excellent. Thank you. I'm unmuting you now. There you go.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. I'd like to start by thanking the BLM for having this public meeting and considering our input for the future of our public lands. I live in Summerlin West, so Calico Basin is my backyard. I can easily walk to the trails from my home, and I utilize this area about 6 to 7 days a week, sometimes multiple times a day. So this is my backyard. I enjoy these trails for multiple purposes, including hiking, trail running, but primarily mountain biking. Even though many of these trails are not officially recognized mountain bike trails, they're very popular among local mountain bikers. In fact, the Calico trails are actually some of the only beginner-friendly green trails in Las Vegas, and they're frequented by the high school mountain bike teams here. So I support most of these trails being recognized as official mountain bike trails. There are definitely some exceptions, and those include trails within the wilderness area, as that's federal policy. And then also I want to conclude with, as a mountain biker who cares deeply about the environment, I understand there needs to be a balance between environmental protection and recreational usage of the land. Other trail systems with similar fragile ecosystems have found this balance. I think a great place to start would be to have educational signage at trailheads on how to leave no trace. And there needs to be education among all trail users. Thanks.
Thank you. Excellent. So I did some searching here, and looks like there's a number of people who are not here, but they may actually be participating on the phone. So I'm just going to remind our one phone caller that if I call your name, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and then I'll be able to unmute you. So Jawad Banga, Jose Valencia, Scott Mayer, Alicia Wellman, and then Ashley Mall. So Ashley, I did actually see that you were here. You want to raise your hand? Oh, excellent. I see you. Okay. I just asked you to unmute. Go ahead, Ashley.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah, please go ahead. Sounds great.
I just have a very brief comment. I just saw this today, and I've just seen such impact over the years in the area, and especially like in Ash Meadows in the back. It's just absolutely spiderwebbed and trampled to death, and there's just so much use. And I absolutely love recreation out there, but I'm very, very concerned with the growth of the city, and this being a conservation area, and conservation being the priority, for the fauna and some of the endangered species and animals there. So I would just like, I know everybody wants to preserve their recreation and wants mountain biking and more bouldering and bigger parking lots, but I would like to see, areas preserved and reserved so that, there's less damage and impact by humans. I see just huge changes over the 45 years that I have been and recreated and used the basin. I'm not saying recreation shouldn't be a part of it, but I do think we should prioritize the conservation. And my big concern is limiting the number of people. I mean, you go there on a weekend and all of the sides of the roads are just lined by cars. It's like, looks like Disneyland. And I don't see how that is, works with conserving, and conserving the natural environment out there. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead. We have one last individual, Garen Chang, and I had searched before and they were not on here. But Garen, I'm going to go ahead and just remind you that I can come back to you and prioritize you if you actually are participating and you just join later. So with that, I'm going to let Teresa go ahead and change the slide for me. Excellent. So now we have the next 10. And since it's actually the last 9 there, since we have about 40 minutes of time remaining, I'll let folks know that once we've gone through everyone who is pre-registered, I'll be actually providing an opportunity for those at that time, once I'm done with this 9, to go ahead and actually provide some additional comments or some comments in addition. And then if we have time at the end of that, we may go back to people who already provide comments. So I'm just going to ask other folks who are not on this list right now to lower their hand, and I'll get to them once we get to that next phase. So with that, Lisa White, are you here? David Leingang. And everyone can go ahead and raise their hand at the bottom of the screen. Thank you, David. I see you. David, you should be able to unmute. I just asked you to unmute. Hello.
Am I there?
You're here. Go ahead.
All right. My name's David Leingang. Moved here in late May, early June, 2020. It's been a lifesaver for me learning how to use the area. Very, very, beautiful area. All the organizers on the meetup and Facebook, I think all those people should be commended for what they do out there, and also contacted for concerns about the way some of this stuff needs to be managed, because they know more about the parks out there than that area than probably even the BLM people themselves, because they're there every day and every moment of the day. So I think it's absolutely wonderful, and I don't want to make it so that it's impossible to get out there anymore, because right now it is a pleasure and it shouldn't be a chore when it's all over. That's my comment.
Thank you. I appreciate your sentiments. David, I'm going to go ahead and I am going to lower your hand and then mute you.
Okay.
So the next individual we have up is John Panozzo. John, are you here? I looked and it looked like you were. If you want to raise your hand, it's the bottom of your screen. John Panozzo. Okay. Well, John, we can come back to you if you actually decide you want to raise your hand later. Joe. Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We do have some late registrants, and so we will be updating this list once Joshua Eddy has done. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. No, I appreciate you updating me. That's perfect. So Joe Deutner. Joe Deutner, I didn't see you on there. I did see Lori Adams, though. Lori, are you here? Would you like to raise your hand? It's at the bottom of your screen. Okay, we'll loop back to you. Aaron Short. Aaron, are you here and want to raise your hand? All right, I see you, Aaron. Okay, go ahead, Aaron. Should be able to unmute now. Good evening, Aaron. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, I just want to say that I would like to preserve access as much as possible to Calico Basin without any fee or reservation system. I think it's important to keep access open to all. It's important for the community, for society, for mental health. And I think that we can find a balance between recreational uses and conservation by reducing some of the braided trails out there, increased signage, and increased enforcement. I know I've heard several comments about dogs off leash, and I too have that concern. I see a lot of feces out there as well, and there's no enforcement. I have never seen a ranger out there enforcing that. So I think that balancing that conservation with recreation, we can do without any kind of fee or restricting access. And also a climber, so I'm excited to hear about the climbing management plan, and excited to hear that you do want to preserve access to the climbing areas, and hopefully to come up with a plan to allow development of new areas. So yeah, that's about all I have. Thank you.
That's excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm going to go ahead, lower your hand and mute you. And next up, we have David Spicer. David, I did see that you were here. You want to raise your hand? You can provide your comment. Excellent. I see you, David. Thank you. Go ahead, David. You should be able to unmute. All right, I'm going to try the workaround I did before. David, I'm going to promote you to a panelist. and you should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself. I think that worked. Perhaps it did not. So one thing that, oh, there you are, David. I see you unmuting yourself. Try that one more time. Looks like you're muted again. In the lower left-hand corner. David, are you able to unmute yourself?
I am. Did I get it done?
You got it done. Thanks. Perfect. We won. Go ahead.
Okay, goodness gracious. What do they call it? Technologically enhanced for handicapped, right? All right. Can you still hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, it's David Spicer. I live in Beatty, Nevada. I'm calling in as the president of the Southern Nevada Mountain Bike Association, president of a conservation effort here. We have a large conservation movement happening in Oasis Valley, 2 hours north of Vegas, and started our own mountain bike trail program and horseback riding and hiking trails, and attempting to bring more recreation to the state of Nevada while recognizing the conservation efforts. I've coined a phrase called conservation through recreation. We educate people when they come to hear about the need for conservation and how bringing people out to recreate gives us an opportunity to open those people's eyes to just that. I stand committed, in this activities to bring, goodness to a trails program in Las Vegas also. I was invited by all the trail users. We have all the Desert Dash, Las Vegas Trail Runners Association, SIMBA, 5,000 or 6,000 members in all of these organizations that we can bring to the table to make appropriate comments. We've had large discussions, so we can look forward to all of our members and all of our groups that are involved with us in our conservation and recreation to bring some good knowledgeable directions. We've got other organizations out there that will work with us to, for trail directions and, for the ultimate contributions necessary to bring this partnership together that's going to bring conservation, recreation, and ultimately some legitimization, to the trail networks and the benefit of the community of Las Vegas and all the recreation people, and consider all the efforts out there. But I just wanted to say thanks again to the BLM people I know and the ones that we get to know for all we've done on our end and going down there. And I appreciate the opportunity to make contributions that are going to be important to the future of this operation. Thank you.
Thank you. Right on the money. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. I am going to go ahead and I am going to demote you from being a panelist. And then I'm going to actually ask Edward Malik. I searched for their name. They weren't here. Edward, if you want, we'll come back to you. Joshua Eddy, if you want, you can raise your hand. Again, if you're one of the people who's calling in by phone and I'm calling you, you can press *9. And actually with that, before we change the slide, I want to go ahead and just remind folks, if you didn't get to speak, we had technical difficulties or wanted to provide more comments, you can visit the RAMP website for more information on how to comment, more information about the RAMP itself. It's virtualpublicmeeting.com/Calico Basin ramp-home. And as an example, Cinna Hunter did not provide an email address when she registered for the meeting, but I just wanted to go ahead and let her know that she actually can call in with the information and actually try and get her audio working that way, because I know we tried before. So we tried to reach out through the internet and it just didn't work because there's no email. So Cinna, the number is 346-248-7799. And now I'm going to hit you with the ID number, and I'll try and go as slow as I can to accommodate it. It's pretty long. The webinar ID that you would need to enter is 933-780-70119. And if you got an email actually with your registration, there is information about how to do that included in that email. Okay, so Cinna, I do see you're here. Oh, it looks like there's actually 2 of you, so maybe you actually called back in. So let me go ahead. I'm going to try and see if we can't allow you to talk, Cinna. Hey, thank you. Let's try this one more time, Cinna. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
I can. If you have another microphone, please mute one of those. Ooh, now you just muted yourself.
Hey, Senna, you'll need to make sure that you have one of your devices muted. So the speaker and the microphone, so that you're just using one device. That's where the feedback is coming from.
Cindy, you want
Yeah, that's still bad, Senna.
Cindy, I'll tell you what, why don't you raise your hand whenever you are able to go ahead and mute one of those? Oh, that sounds better. You're unmuted now. But maybe now it sounds like you can't talk. Okay.
She may not have a microphone on that particular item that she's using. And so she might want to disconnect that and just use the other device she's on.
Okay. Senna, if at any point you want to go ahead and try and raise your hand again, and we'll try it again, I will accommodate that. If you figure out which microphone, if there's two microphones or two speakers, that's usually what causes that feedback loop. So I apologize, but for the moment, I'm going to disable talking for you, and then I'm going to move on to the next list. Excellent. Okay, Michael McDonald, are you here? Okay, hey, there we go. Hi, Michael.
Hey.
Hi, go ahead.
Okay. Hey, I am commenting on behalf of, I'm sure, hundreds of present and future Summerlin residents who highly value the Calico area as a mountain biking destination, and especially for beginners, as was previously mentioned by Jen Hanks. It's also used as a conduit to access other riding areas throughout the valley. And it was mentioned earlier that we should mention those access points that are important. So I would mention the Stevie Wonder Trail, which you should be able to see on the map that you've provided. Also the Sun Trail, and the area connects into other riding areas via the two drainage tunnels, one right near the cattle guard, and the other one closer to the entrance to the Red Rock Loop. And I think the reason why Calico is so important to me and to many others is that it provides the residents of this area immediate access to a trail network. Like Jen stated earlier, you can ride directly from your backyard and be on the trails. I think that's a huge asset for a community like this. You don't have to load up your bike and drive miles away to go to a trailhead and ride and then drive back home. You can just get straight out of your driveway and hit the trails. I'm also a coach for one of the youth mountain bike teams. We've got about 30 kids, and we use this area on a weekly basis for our practices. And it's very nice to be able to meet with these kids and ride straight to the trails. And not only that, but it's very nice as a parent to be able to know that if my kids want to go ride their bikes on their own, that they can leave straight from their driveway and they can be on trails and off of roads literally within a few blocks. And to have that peace of mind is priceless. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Excellent. Thank you for participation. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to disable talking and then lower your hand. And then next, I'm going to go to Joel McMillan. Joel, if you're here, go ahead. You can press the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. I didn't see you in the list, so I'm going to move on to Keith Wheeler. Keith, you want to go ahead and raise your hand? Excellent. Thanks for participating, Keith. Go ahead.
First off, I want to thank everyone for putting this presentation together and accommodating the public and all the public that participated as well. I'm an equestrian user, And so I'm mostly concerned about my use of the things, just as the mountain bikers are concerned about theirs and those scramblers are concerned about theirs. With that in mind, with the BLM working with the Clark County, right now, about the only place that you can park and use that as an equestrian trail system is to park alongside the access road. If BLM and the county decide that they want to put in a fee section and they actually close parking on the sides of the roads, BLM has a history of not providing adequate parking for horses and for horse trailers where we can safely unload our equestrian horses and use it. Basically what happens is BLM says, yeah, this is open to horses, you can ride here, but they don't give us a place to park. If you don't give us a place to park and have safe access, it's the same thing as saying close to horses. So please keep that in mind when you're trying to draw up there. If you're going to allow equestrian use, you have to provide somewhere for us to park. And you can't say, hey, go in the big parking lot where everybody else is inundating the area, because when we try to park in a standard parking area, we get blocked in by all the cars. We can't do that. So the other thing that John Allen was talking about that before he ran out of time is educating trail users. We need to make sure that the kiosks that it's going to be multi-use. I'm assuming that we're going to have mountain bikes in Calico. We have them now. They're not enforcing the fact that they're not supposed to be there. That it's against the current RFP. So if they're there now, then they'll definitely be there afterwards, whether you allow them or not. So we want to make sure that all users get together, educate each other, and work together to properly use the trails. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Those were some great comments. I'm going to lower your hand and disable talking. So next up we have John Hedges. John, you want to open there we go. I see you. I'm going to ask to unmute. John, you should be able to go ahead.
Check, check. You got a copy?
Roger.
All right. This is John Hedges. I'm a local outdoorsman. My comments are meant to address my worst case scenario, which is the possibility that Calico Basin becomes controlled by a toll booth similar to the way the scenic drive is controlled, along with a timed entry reservation system with quotas and operating hours. I'm concerned about the possibility of a large development being constructed at the entrance to Calico Basin Road. If a toll plaza and a trailhead with a large parking area and bathrooms are constructed, perhaps in conjunction with the new paved bicycle path, the environmental impact would be substantial. It's also clear to me that such a large new development would only serve to attract more people, creating more problems rather than solving anything we are facing right now. If a reservation system is imposed on Calico Basin, this would disenfranchise people that have no credit card or internet. There are people out there whose lives could be changed for the better with just a little access to our public lands, and they could be essentially locked out with the imposition of a reservation system. Furthermore, I personally object to the payment of a $2 reservation fee to a private company in order to access public lands. If a toll booth were to be constructed, I would like more details on how the residents of Calico would be allowed to bypass a line at the toll booth. If this comes to pass, this plan will have the appearance of a gated community being built for the benefit of only a few residents. We are discussing roads that are owned and maintained by the county, and I object to the BLM barring access to roads that I pay to maintain with my taxes. I got a lot more. I'll just put it in an email and send it off to you. Thanks a lot for your time, and thanks for considering my comments.
Thanks, John. Thanks for your participation. I'm going to lower your hand and then go ahead and mute you. All right. Next up, we have Jeremy Bruner. Jeremy, are you here? If you want to raise your hand, it's at the bottom of the screen. And if you're the phone call participant, that's *9 in order to raise your hand. So Courtney Mooney. Courtney, are you here? You can raise your hand at the bottom of the screen. Okay, anyone who I call out and we don't get to them and you want to raise your hand later, that's fine. I'll go back to you and prioritize you. Richard Natale. Richard, are you here? Excellent. Thank you, Richard. Richard, go ahead. All right, I am asking you to unmute, and for some reason that gets a little bit fiddly. So I'm going to promote you to a panelist, and then that means you should be able to unmute yourself. That's in the lower left of your screen, Richard.
All right, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Go ahead.
William, you're on mute.
Thank you. Richard, did you want to provide a comment? You went right back on off of mute. Again, go ahead, Richard. You had it for a second.
I said my questions were answered during the original meeting, so I don't have anything else.
Okay, well, excellent. Thanks, Richard.
You're welcome.
I'm going to go ahead, and we have one last individual who is signed up here, Vanessa Rollins. And Vanessa, do you want to go ahead and raise your hand? I'd searched before and thought I'd seen you there. Vanessa Rollins. And I wanted to, since Vanessa's not raising her hand, I wanted to reach back out to Cinna, who actually looks like she's dropped off. We finally did find your email address, and we'll be contacting you with just a follow-up about the technical difficulties and reminding you of actually how you can provide more comments. So I wanted to actually remind everyone of that. If you didn't get to speak or you want to provide more comments, you can visit the RAMP website for more information, and it'll tell you how to provide comments. You can sign up actually to be added to the mailing list. So that means we'll tell you once the next public comment period is coming up. And that's at www.virtualpublicmeeting.com, Calico Basin ramp-home. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and suggest that anyone who has not had an opportunity to provide a comment yet, raise your hand. So if you didn't pre-register for providing a comment and you haven't done so yet, just go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll open it up to everybody. Again, that's at the bottom of your screen. And we'll give it a little bit of time. We actually have, looks like about 18 minutes left to do that. And then if I'm not seeing anyone who hasn't provided a comment yet, but then we want to go back and allow others who already did to provide additional comments, I'll open it up. We'll give it about another 30 seconds. I just wanted to remind everyone actually that the BLM really does appreciate all of the input that we're getting here, both the questions as well as the comments and the further comments that you could submit by mail and email. It's really impressive with the number of folks who have turned out and the quality of the comments that we're getting throughout this process. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and actually, oh, there we go. Looks like we have some other folks who already provided comments, so they know where we're going. John, you're the first one up. John, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to allow you to talk. Go ahead, John.
Hey, thanks. I'll just finish off my statement here. Rather than strictly controlling access to Calico Basin, I would suggest that the BLM devote more resources to patrolling the trails. If it's been said earlier, but if we had rangers regularly patrolling, then things like graffiti will occur far less. The BLM has an enormous national budget, some of which really should be spent on additional patrols to protect the land and perhaps educate users rather than going to us end users and asking for more fees that may occur with a toll booth. Protecting the land so that plants and animals can thrive is clearly important. However, doing this at the expense of recreational access to our public lands, I feel that's counter to how the National Conservation Area is defined, which clearly states that these lands are, among other things, of recreational value, and they are, quote, for the benefit and enjoyment of present and future generations. The greatly increased usage of Calico Basin is the direct result of the pandemic. People were encouraged by health authorities to get outside to stay healthy. And also there's been a lot of widespread unemployment. But once these lockdowns end, visitation, I think, will return to normal. So I don't feel it's right to make sudden major changes based on this temporary situation. So that's all I have. And again, thanks a lot for your time. And thank you for considering my comments.
Thanks for your participation, John. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to disable talking and then lower your hand. And actually, looks like I already did that. So we're back up with John Allen. John, I'm going to allow you to talk now and ask you to unmute. There you go.
Good.
Yeah, you got it. Come on back.
All right, thank you. I want to echo the sentiments about our appreciation of you guys holding the meetings and getting the public input. One of the things that I am very interested in doing is echoing the sentiments of our mountain biking friend in Beatty, Nevada. We are in the process of putting together a trail users coalition. And so I invite any of these folks that are commenting in here to go to our Facebook page, Backcountry Horsemen of Nevada, Bristlecone, and contact us and let us know you're interested in being part of the Trail Users Coalition, which would cover not only the Red Rock area, but all of Southern Nevada. So the biggest thing that I see in this whole thing is allowing the greatest amount of public use while taking the greatest amount of measure to protect the environment. Our organization of Backcountry Horsemen has developed a great system of leave no trace in the wilderness. And so it's a very doable thing. So appreciate it. And I think we can reach there if we work together. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for coming back on and providing that additional information. So anyone else who would like to go ahead and raise their hand now, whether you've provided, oh, great, Keith, you've got your hand up. Even if you've already provided comments, go ahead and raise your hand now. Oh, sorry, there we go, Keith, you should be up.
Just want to make sure that that we're all thinking that of the same thing when we talk about public access. We have to remember that public access isn't the most important aspect of the BLM and the conservation area. Protecting the public lands has to be foremost, and if it means limiting access, if it means limiting numbers of people, if you overuse an area, it won't be there for the future generations. And so with that in mind, I know that that'll be weighed in as part of your RMP, but we need to make sure that we reach out to the public better and make sure that they understand that any limiting is because I want my grandchildren to be able to use it. If all of a sudden you allow 2 million people into Calico Basin won't be there. So the other thing that I'd like to ask is when we finally get past the current COVID situation, it would be really enlightening to see if we can get BLM to go ahead and start having the meetings, the public meetings there at the visitor center like they did years ago. Whether Katrina and Josh, if you could look into doing that again once the COVID is gone. Those used to be really enlightening. There used to be monthly meetings just so everybody would know what's going on, and be nice if we could get those back. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and mute you and just ask anyone if you have additional comments, you want to go ahead and provide some final comments. If we don't see anyone else's hands go up, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move to the final slide and provide information on how people can actually provide their comments in addition to this and talk about the website. And then Josh is going to go ahead and see us off. So this is the final chance caller on the phone, it's *9 if you want to raise your hand, or you can raise your hand at the bottom of the screen. Thank you, Thomas. I'm going to go ahead and go back to you now. Go ahead, Thomas.
I would like to mirror the sentiment of John Hedges, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, in that no extra fee, whether it be the expansion of the already existing and in the management plan pre-approved fee area, or even the worst part, the fee that is charged on top of it by a private corporation to access the public lands, should not be enacted unless there is a very specific need for it, and unless it actually enhances the recreation opportunities as it was foreseen in the Federal Lands Recreation Enhancement Act. Second, there was a concern of someone, I don't recall the name, that the area won't be there. I mean, I understand the need for protecting wild plants, animals, and so on. And I understand that the area is currently designated as a conservation area. However, the designations do change. And right now, as I recall, we have a proposal from one of our senators for an additional, I don't know, 20,000 acres of development in exchange for protecting an extra million acres or whatnot. And the rocks, they will still be there. Can't we designate two areas, say high impact and low impact sections? And in the high impact, we allow the people, we expand what we call recreational use. And in the low impact ones, such as the wildernesses, those that aren't already accessible and those that comprise the vast majority of the NCA, as it's said in the answers to the north and so on. And finally, I want to ask for more, not day use, but night use for people who can't go during the 9 to 5 when it's normally open, or evening use, call it. I don't mean overnight use or camping, but I do mean evening use when the majority of people are free to go on an evening hike or scramble. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and point everyone to this slide. And basically, we're just going to leave that up for the remainder of the meeting. I'll really quickly go through it. This is how you submit further comments. You can go to the website, which again is virtualpublicmeeting.com/Calico Basin ramp-home. It explains to you there how you can make a comment by sending an email to the BLM's project-specific email address there. I won't go through it because it's a real mouthful to explain, but everyone who can see it, you know what I'm looking at. Or you can also mail it to the Red Rock Sloan Field Office and just have Calico Basin Ramp. As Josh said earlier in the meeting, the comments must be received by March 25th, 2021 in order to be considered in the early planning process. Comments can be received after that. However, it's possible they may not get incorporated into a report that will summarize some of this early planning. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave this slide up. And then when appropriate, the BLM will go ahead and close this meeting out. So I thank everyone for their participation, and I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and turn off my video.
Yeah, thank you, William. And thank you to everyone who participated in this meeting. I said this before, and I'll say it again. This is the most important part of the process. We need to hear from you. And if you were not able to comment or you're still working on developing those comments, please utilize that email address that we're providing, but also help us spread the word between now and the closing time of the commenting period. Please help us in getting more people to provide comments and feedback so that we can really have a lot of information that goes into the development of this recreation area management plan. With that said, we're very appreciative, and I hope everyone has a wonderful night tonight. Thank you.
The meeting is now concluded. Thank you for attending.